Hey, what's going on? So in today's video, I'm going to be talking about how to store a plow on a gravel driveway. So I have this issue every year where I take the plow off, and then when I go to rehook it up in the fall, it's sunk into the gravel because everything's thawed and the gravel's gotten soft. So I'm going to talk about what I do to stop that from happening. It's very simple. All you're going to need is some 1x. I use 1x6 and a 2x12. So I got a big chunk of 2x12 and 1x6 that's about as long as each part of the blade. Now this would work for a straight blade or a v-plow. This happens to be a v-plow. This is a Fisher Xtreme V. Same theory for each one. Basically what you're doing by using a 1x6 is you're spreading out the surface area of the plow. So instead of the thin piece of metal, which is like a 1/2 inch or 5/8 or something, instead of that being able to just dig in, you set it on this and it spreads out all that weight so it can't really sink in. And I use a 2x12 to put under the foot of the jack so that that can't sink in either. So what ends up happening, and why this is a bad thing, is when it sinks and you go to hook up your plow again, then the plow has dropped, so they don't line up. And like, I think it was last year or the year before, I had to use a jack and like jack up the plow just so I could get it on the truck. So let me show you how I'm going to do this. First thing I'm going to do is just lift the plow a little bit, just enough so I can get these under there, and then unhook the plow. Okay, so as you can see, the blade is sitting on the board. I've also got that 2x12 under the jack, so when I pull the pin, so now the jack is sitting on that 2x12, and that should keep it from sinking in. Now, you probably don't want to use anything thicker than a 1x, which is 3/4 of an inch, because if you do, it's going to raise your plow up more and offset how that whole thing hooks up anyway. So probably best just using something like 3/4 of an inch. As far as the jack, it doesn't really matter how thick that is because that just is where the jack height is. That's not going to affect anything. So you could use a 1x or a 2x for that. Now I've got the plow straight right now. You could do this in V. I used to always store it in V, and I feel like I had more trouble hooking it up when it was in V, you know, back that way. So I started taking it off in the straight position, and it seems to work better. My theory behind that was, you know, this is a V-plow, but there's straight blade plows, and they don't pull back. So they're the same mount and everything, so I figured I would try it, and it seems to work pretty good for me. The only thing different I notice is that when you take it off, the whole headpiece tends to move a little bit more, which can be good or bad. When you go to hook it back up, this thing could be pushed backwards because there's a little more slack in the chain, and that will cause that to drop. So you just have to be careful. You might have to pull this forwards a little bit when you go to rehook it back up. So now that those boards are in, I'm going to disconnect it. Actually, my pin's not all the way down, so I'm going to turn it back on, put it in float, and push this down the rest of the way, and that'll give full slack on this chain, and then unhook it. Now that's very important to do because if the piston's up at all, it can corrode easier, and also it puts the full slack on the chain, which makes it easier to put this thing back on come time to do that. So if you're not already familiar with how to take this off, let me show you real quick. I already showed you pulling that pin drops the jack down, and you also have to pull this, which will pull the main pins out. But to do that, you have to put a little pressure here. So that's got to be out. Push that, pull that, and those are disconnected. Then you just unhook all your plugs. So now that everything's unplugged, make sure the jack is secured, and it is. This is unhooked. Everything's good to go. We're ready to back away. So you want to make sure now, if you're storing it for the season, You give this thing a good wash. If you've got any lubricant that you can spray on any of the metal, I'm actually going to take this in and they spray the whole truck and the plow and everything with Crown Rust Protection. But they give it a good wash and get all the salt off of it, and then I store it. So this is not its final resting place for the year. If you got anything out of this video, give it a thumbs up down below. Subscribe to the channel if you're interested in more plowing videos and business videos and carpentry stuff. And see you on the next video.